Welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore the journey of the winged messenger Mercury through the sign of Sagittarius, which begins on the 2nd of November but goes on through to the 8th of January. Mercury usually takes around about 21 days to go through each sign. Why is it longer this time? Well, of course, it is that retrograde, which begins on the 26th of November. But before then, we have the Pre Retrograde Shadow. Afterwards, from the 15th of December, we have the Post Retrograde Shadow through to early January. What's the significance of them? Now, Mercury in Sagittarius is detrimented. It's also clashing brutally with Saturn 3 times through this process. It also goes face to face with the ruler of the sign of Sagittarius, Jupiter, 3 times. We also have a Mercury cazimi on the 6th of December, and that is going to be an inferior conjunction. What's the significance of that? I'm going to unpack all of this for you, share the themes of Mercury through its rulership of Gemini, but also of Virgo, what we can expect in the sign of Sagittarius. I'm going to share with you too the event chart. So when Mercury exactly arrives at 7:18 p.m. Universal Time, what do the other planetary influences feeding into that event tell us? From a solar perspective, Mercury will be in house 9, but natally it's in house 6, very much to do with the influence of Virgo, which Mercury rules, which is to do with precision. I'm then going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm just going to tell you that if you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, I'll produce for you your free written zodiac forecast, Chinese forecast and also love forecast. You'll get the rest of this year free, but also my special package of 30% off, you'll get your life roadmap report. All this information is stunning value. It also gives you a lot of extra intel to guide your moves and work into the new year in the most effective way possible. Each chart is totally unique for each person it's produced for. Please see the link below for more. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please check out my testimonials. See what many people have found working with me. If you're a patron, thank you for all your support. Now, patrons can download a factoid on Mercury's retrograde. Please see the link below for that. So Mercury moves into Sagittarius, as I mentioned, on the 2nd of November at 7:18 p.m. Universal. Its arrival here is really interesting because Mercury is definitely detrimented here, but we need to see the big picture, which is a very Sagittarian theme, in that Mercury was in retrograde right at the start of this year. It was also in a conjunction with Mars. Mars in Sagittarius is very thrusting, it's very adventurous, it's very much on the front foot, but both were squaring up to Neptune. I've mentioned before about the post-truth age that I feel that we're living in. It's not so much about the facts, it's more about perception, but also it's very much to do with people's particular beliefs. And what it has meant, that square between Mercury and Neptune right at the start of this year, suggests the potential for misinformation and for distortion has been extraordinarily strong. The interesting thing about this event is because Saturn's going to challenge Mercury 3 times. Saturn in the 12th sign is very much about consequences because Saturn's coming to the end of its journey through the entire zodiac. Of course, it's going to dart into Aries next year for just over 3 months, but it's going to be at the start of 2026 that we really start a new epoch with both Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Aries for a longer period of time. But that position of Saturn in Pisces and how it informs this particular transit of Mercury is going to see some things come into the open that are to do with what we can't necessarily see. And some of that distortion that has gone on, not just this year, I understand that, people are going to be held more to account. But the sign of Sagittarius is also about the rule of law. It's also about information. It can also be about contracts. And because of the American presidential election, I feel it's to do with people's voices. People want to be heard, and the sign of Sagittarius can amplify the point of view. But that's why the retrograde here is so tenuous, it's so sensitive, and I'll be going through all of this with you. But what does Mercury in Sagittarius represent? Well, I feel it's a very restless energy. Of course, just like Gemini and Virgo, which Mercury rules, it's still a mutable sign, so it's very much about fluidity. But it can be inquisitive, so people with Mercury in Sagittarius or the 9th house in their natal charts will have a real passion for gathering facts. That ability to see the big picture is there, but perhaps there can be a tendency to not grapple with the details that Mercury's rulership of Virgo really likes us to invest in, that precision. Now, it can be over-optimistic. It can be a little bit bombastic about expressing points of view. The enthusiasm is undoubted, but it can also be blunt. It does love a freedom of movement. So if you're someone who's absolutely dying to get away for some winter sun or snow, the chance to hop on that plane is probably going to be, or the desire to hop on that plane is going to be very strong. But just be aware, with the retrograde and Saturn applying to this event and Jupiter in opposition, then there could be some snags ahead. So it's very important that we're considered about what we say, what we think about, what we research, and wherever we are putting things in place, we need to really show a great deal of attention to detail. Now, just to say that Mercury is androgynous, and therefore that makes it a very interesting influence in these changing times. Its rulership of Gemini, which of course is air, very much about communication, equally mutable as Sagittarius, is those fast communications. It can be an intermediary between the higher energies of the heavens and the more earthly ones that we occupy. It can be about those quick everyday chats that we have each day, our connections with neighbours, siblings, certainly with technology, and it's also very much linked to short, fast journeys. Now, the sign of Virgo, which is also mutable, but is an earth sign. So here, Mercury's wanting to achieve something that's tangible and lasting and useful. So it's very much about that precision and attention to detail, to be of assistance, to serve, and it has a great connection to purity. So anything to do with being careful about what we eat and drink and the exercise we do can all feed into our health in a positive way. Although some astrologers, and I would agree with them, would say that Scorpio is probably more to do with the cycle of life. Virgo is more to do with our capacity to balance the things that we really like and enjoy in a more moderated way. Now, I'm going to share with you now on the screen the solar event chart. And the big takeout is that Mercury actually forges a brilliant link with Pluto. Now, Pluto's just in house 10. It's going to move back to Aquarius on the 19th of November. If you've yet to watch my deep dive video, please click on the link within this video and you can check that out, because I'm telling you what Pluto in 2025 will mean for all 12 signs. But you can see there's Mercury in house 9, but Pluto's just in Capricorn, so technically it's a disassociate sextile, but we're talking about just 5 minutes from being exact. So Mercury sextile Pluto gives us an ability to penetrate right into the heart of a topic or a situation with great veracity. Now, Mercury is also in an excellent dissociate angle to Mars. You can see that Mars is coming up to the end of its journey through the sign of Cancer. It's going to move into Leo on the 4th of November, but it is in that very potent opposition to Pluto. So we're going to see a lot of tension. Pluto in Capricorn is about power and the people who want to hold on to power in a potentially very leveraged way with Mars in the mix, because Mars in Cancer can be the ultimate passive aggressive position. Mars is in its full in the sign of Cancer. Since the 6th of September, it may have made us feel more emotional, perhaps a little bit more reactive around our sensitivities. It could have seen us achieve things around our home situations for sure, but that opposition really threads into this event in a big way. So that's where the care of what we say and what we think is so crucial. So Mercury is trying to Mars, in terms of Mercury still being in Scorpio, will become exact earlier on the 2nd of November. But they're still in touch, very much so. And that gives us an opportunity to be very passionate. And once Mars moves into Leo on the 4th, that fire energy, because we already have Venus in Sagittarius, that fire energy is really going to be amped up in a very positive way. So after all the intensity of the Scorpio vibe, we have an opportunity to get into action mode, and that's very exciting. So that's part of this event too. But critically, we need to look at the planets that are in the signs of Gemini and Virgo, which are ruled by Mercury. But you know, it's only one, and that's Jupiter in its retrograde in Gemini. But that's in an opposition to Venus. Now, if you have that natally, the chances are you're a very generous, warm-hearted person, perhaps with a real love of a good time. However, in this combination, it's important that we don't promise more than we can realistically deliver, because Jupiter, like Mercury in Sagittarius, is detrimented. So it's not its best location. So important to just be aware of that. So the solar event chart tells us that as Mercury moves into Sagittarius, we need to drill into the detail of things in its link with Pluto. We need to be aware of power and how people are trying to use power to have control, because that's Pluto's opposition with Mars. But we can also see the ways in which we can use our ideas with greater enthusiasm and thrust, particularly from the 4th, when Mars makes its way into Leo, where it's far happier than it is in Cancer. But what about the natal event chart based on Placidus, Greenwich, not because I'm in the UK, but because of the prime meridian? And you can see the Ascendant is at 4 degrees and 30 in Cancer, so that's quite an emotional position, but it's actually in a quincunx to the position of Mercury. So important that we do really push ourselves to take the time. Don't rush what our decision making can be. We really need to analyze things, get beneath the surface. But Mercury is in the 6th house and Pluto's in the 8th. So if we do want to grapple with those details that Mercury's rulership of Virgo really gets, there's a chance to do it. So big picture, small picture, we'll take that. But what about the opposition between Mars and Pluto? 2nd and 8th houses. It's about the money. That's interesting. We've also got Jupiter in 12 against Venus in 6. Jupiter in 12 is actually blessed, I feel, because that's an echo of its Piscean energy. So it's much more about the spiritual domain. And that's useful because that reminds us of the importance of not getting so caught up in counter viewpoints, because obviously this is a time when people are very passionate about the things that they believe in, that we try to retain that little bit of humanity, that little bit of compassion, that even if people see things differently, it's sometimes because their experience is very different, or they struggle perhaps to download some knowledge because they're very entrenched in certain prejudice. And of course, we all do tend to read or watch the channels which confirm our views. So it's confirmation bias. It's something that's very hard to resist, even for people who are stridently trying to avoid it. But what about the aspects ahead? Because I mentioned in my introduction that Jupiter and Saturn are going to be big players. Now, Mercury square Saturn, the first time, occurs between the 10th and the 15th of November, and it's exact on the 12th. Now, the Pre Retrograde Shadow starts on the 7th of November. So that's the exact degree that when the whole process unravels, that's where we go back to normal. And that's 6 degrees and 23 minutes. But what happens is that Mercury square, through that particular part of its journey, is when the pre-retrograde shadow is in place. So things are slowing down. And what I feel will happen is that Saturn gets a bad rap. Saturn is not there to punish us. It's there to remind us of our responsibilities. It's also there to remind us of the power of wisdom, experience, knowledge. In the sign of Pisces, it's in its culmination phase. So it's the end. And obviously once it gets back into Aries at the start of, in January 2026, we start a completely new process of another 29 and a half years. So we're up to about 28 at this stage. And once it, or 28 and a half years, and once Saturn gets back to the start of Aries, that's the whole process again. So what we started about 28 and a half years ago is what we're reaping now. And, you know, I do feel that the way information is shared and the power that certain very big organizations have over the exchange of information, I think you know who I'm talking about. I don't have to name them, but they have huge power over where we source information from, how we exchange photographs and experiences, and of course even newspapers are really struggling to deal with the huge influence that these players have. So what Saturn's doing really is saying, look, there are consequences if we don't share information wisely, if we're not moderate in what we say, if we don't think about things carefully. So that's the first phase. But then in week 3 of November, it's Mercury opposite Jupiter, which can be a very lucky influence. But of course, they're both detrimented. Now, some astrologers would see that as a mutual receptivity, even though they're in opposite signs. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the use of language could be inflated and exaggerated very easily, in my humble opinion, in week 3 and exact on the 18th of November. Now, in December, from the 29th of November through to the 6th of December and exact on the 4th of December, again, we have Mercury opposite Jupiter. But we also on the 6th have a Mercury cazimi. What is that? Well, as we view it from the Earth, Mercury is in between us and the Sun because of the inferior conjunction. What the Sun does is amplifies the power of Mercury. So it's in the heart of. That's what a cazimi is. So if we've got something enthusiastic to share, that's well thought through, we've got an idea or a plan that we're really excited about, that's a great opportunity to showcase it for sure. But then we get the second of the squares with Saturn from the 4th to the 9th, exact on the 7th of December. And of course, we are in the midst of the retrograde, so even more potential for niggles and disagreements and conflict. Now, Mercury ends its retrograde on the 15th of December, but we get the third Mercury-Saturn square between the 23rd and the 30th, exact on the 27th. So when it comes to the Christmas get-together, particularly that Saturn and Jupiter are going to be squaring up on Christmas Eve, again, there can be real tensions about the exchange of ideas. And we also have Mercury opposite Jupiter in week 3 of December and exact on the 26th. So we're all going to need to work through these very, very powerful signs with a great deal of care. Now, Mercury comes out of its post-retrograde shadow on the 3rd of January, and it goes into the sign of Capricorn on the 8th of January. So I hope that gives you some kind of overview. So if we think really big picture, we started this year with huge potential for Russian opinions, with Mercury in a retrograde in Sagittarius conjunct Mars, squaring Neptune. So our subconscious was feeding the viewpoints that we took right from the start of the year. Now we get a repetition of Mercury's retrograde in Sagittarius, where it's not at its best, clashing with Saturn, clashing, I feel, with Jupiter. So we need to use our language as moderately and carefully as we possibly can. Now I'm going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, from Aries through to Pisces, to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. But someone has asked me, what do I watch? Well, if you're someone with a great familiarity of your natal chart, whether you use equal house, whether you use whole sign, or a proportional house system like Placidus, for sure use your ascendant. If you know your ascendant, but you're not quite so clear on what it all means, you'll never go wrong with the sun. The sun's the root of your soul. It's where you're going to be demonstrating the inner part of your being. The ascendant's how other people see us. It's how we connect to the world. It can be about our physicality and our health and our bodies, but essentially the sun's the root of us. So if you're not sure, you won't go wrong with the sun. Now, I share the concept of watching for the moon for those people who are real aficionados and like to perhaps look at the ascendant, sun and moon if it's different, because that gives them a lot of information that they can sift through. But really the choice is yours. But do remember, there's no set rule, because every single nativity, every single birth chart is totally unique. So you can have two people who are born on the same day, and as long as it's not the same time and in the same place, they could have a very different life experience. And also our genetics feed into it as well, and also our nurture. So it's not just about the astrology, but if you aren't sure, watch the sun. The sun's also very useful in terms of how you connect to the wider world in terms of work, I feel. The ascendant is how you see yourself. It could be how other people see you. The descendant is how you connect to other people. The 4th house is where we retreat. It's all about care and repair. It's about rest. The 10th house, the midheaven, is where we connect to the world. That's our midday point. That's where we want to seek recognition, or we want to connect to influential people and be successful in terms of our goals and ambitions. So the ascendant, if you really know your stuff, the sun if you're not so sure. Please stay with me as I start off first of all with Aries. So Aries, one of the things you can do with this particular event, I feel, is think about knowledge. Because knowledge, even if you are highly educated, is something that can always evolve. And whether it's life experience, whether it's visiting places, whether it's getting to know about local customs or food, or the more philosophical elements of life, history, all of those things are knowledge. The people who are very set in their lives and are not great knowledge seekers are the people that through this period, I feel, through to the end of the first week of January 2025, that you may find a little bit dull to be around. Because your enthusiasm is about to be ignited in such a magical way. Once your ruler Mars moves into Leo on the 4th, still in touch with Mercury in Sagittarius, that energy in itself is going to be manifest. It's going to put you on the front foot. Also, Mars moving into your 5th house is much more to do with joyfulness, the sharing of fun, meeting up and mixing and mingling, socializing, showcasing your talents. If you're looking for a romantic assignation, your desire to pursue it is certainly going to be increased. And also with Jupiter and Venus in an opposition, the bubbly part of your nature, your natural enthusiasm, really strong. What's not to like? Well, I just feel it is very important, just like it is for us all, to measure what you say in a very thoughtful manner. So when it comes to big decisions that you need to make, so for example, if you're talking about a contract, thinking about taking out some kind of lease, thinking of buying a big ticket item, get down into the detail of situations. Don't rush. There's a part of your nature that's absolutely magnificent. When you're on form and you're on the front foot, it is about going for life with a certain amount of abandon. But what Saturn is telling you, and has been telling you since March 2023, is there are elements of your life that are fading away. And the way forwards for you, therefore, is through increasing your knowledge. The breadth of your knowledge, the wider it is, the more informed the decisions you can make. What about the retrograde? Well, there's no doubt about it. Travel could be affected by for everyone, because the sign of Sagittarius is an international sign. It is about borders, boundaries, and it can be about our desire to be free, to fly free, to be more adventurous, to be independent. So something around your psychological situation, or because of past efforts and legacy, so a karmic situation, could prevent you breaking out in quite the way that you would like. But it does depend on your unique situation. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. So Taurus, for you, Mercury's going to be in the 8th house. Now the 8th house is very much in keeping with the energy of Scorpio. It's about not taking things at face value. Nothing wrong with that, particularly with the retrograde to come. So your ability to tease beneath the surface and understand what's really meant can be emphasized. And don't think Mercury retrograde is going to cause only snags. It definitely can create opportunities. And those opportunities come from rethinking things, perhaps resetting our posture around things that maybe in the past we've taken more at face value. So the 8th house, shared resources, can be investments, can be business, can be long-term investment, things like legacies and wills. But the position of Saturn, we have to be mindful of that, is in your 11th house. So for example, if you're in a collaboration with someone, romantic or business, and you don't see it as being for the long term, which is the 11th house, Saturn is reminding you that at some point you are going to have to make a binding decision to invest more in what you need as an individual, which is the 1st house. And of course, with Mars and Pluto in an opposition as this event occurs, they're going across for you the 3rd and 9th house curse, which is very much about the expression of ideas, but in a very strong-willed way. It's basically, you're not going to take a step backwards. So if there's someone that you feel is blocking or inhibiting your progress, the chances are you're going to want to be quite direct. But then, ironically, the opposition between Jupiter and Venus, your ruler Venus, could see you enormously generous to someone who may be less fortunate. So it seems to me that you could be thinking about resources, you could be thinking about money, and the communication around that is what you're going to need to nurse very carefully. So for example, if you're talking about a contract, if you're trying to deal with someone who may become an investor in your idea, or you're trying to get a bank loan, or trying to finance a new vehicle, absolutely vital that you're really penetrating deep down into the details. And don't take no for it. But what about the romantic dimension of the 8th house? Because it's where we can be most invested, most devoted, and most committed. But what about if the other person isn't? We all know that Mercury retrogrades can reveal things. And it's possible because of the more analysing energy, particularly with Mercury and Pluto, that you are going to consider something in a bit of a different way. And what you really need to think, is someone just in as much as I'm in? And if they're not, Saturn in that 11th house is not just about the future, it's about your ideology, it's what drives your life. It's above the physical realm of just success, goals and ambition. It's about where we feel that spiritual sweet spot. And Saturn's testing it, and it has been testing it since March 2023. So if you're in a situation where you feel that you're in, maybe around shared finances, you live together, or you're in a business relationship with someone, but you don't feel it's quite right, you're going to have some big questions that you need to ask yourself, really. And the answer to them will probably only really start to emerge from the 8th of January when Mercury moves into Capricorn, because for you, that's the point of Mercury's journey, where information is a desire, or the information we seek is more about a higher truth, but it can also be about freedom. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. Gemini, what a fascinating transit this can be. I'm sorry if I sound a bit Aquarius there, a bit like the crazy professor. Let's look at what this subject's going to encounter through this transit. But seriously, because Mercury is in your 7th house, that's about relationships. And the strength of that is it enables us to detach ourselves a little bit more, which air signs have a natural gift for, and just step back and think, well, what does this mean? If something's seriously been aggravating you recently and your nervous system has felt really on edge, Mercury in the 6th house is quite a brittle influence. Mercury in the 7th means that, they see it differently to me. Well, okay. But is it going to be that simple? Because, of course, Mars and Pluto for you are in that incredibly tense opposition across your 2nd and 8th houses. And if it is about money, it is about business, it is about a very deep sexual relationship, it's much more difficult to be more detached in the way I'm saying. But I feel that your relationships with all sorts of people could go through some very potent transitions right through to the 8th of January. And of course, that square to Saturn that repeats itself 3 times is something you do need to be mindful of, because Saturn can be about karma. It can be about timing, it can be about hard lessons, but it's also where we've been most dedicated. But if your focus has been very much on the ambition, the status, but not so much on the relationships that haven't been working so well for you, whether they've been professional ones, public ones, or personal ones, are likely to be revealed. And yet with Jupiter in your sign facing up to Mercury, on the face of it, you would seem to have a bubbly way of being that can perhaps assuage some people's anxieties, and maybe it can, but that's where Mercury's retrograde could trip up that particular idea, because Mercury not at its best in Sagittarius. So if you're saying something that you feel is magnanimous and very uplifting and encouraging, someone might actually be a little bit wary of what your motives are. Also, with Mars about to move into your 3rd house, your passion to express yourself can be very strong. If there is someone that you really, really like, the connection between Mars and Mercury, which in terms of the fire signs will occur on the 4th of November, could be a great chance to ask that person out, reinvigorate a tie that's perhaps lost a little bit of its spark because of other demands and pressures. But how you relate is really what Mercury in this retrograde season is going to ask you to think about. And it can definitely be about professional relationships or your desire to maybe be a little bit more in charge of a personal relationship that could be tested out. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. So Cancer, for you, Mercury's move into Sagittarius is an echo, particularly the natal chart having an ascendant in Cancer. It's an echo of the energy of Virgo because of the precision. But of course we get a dichotomy there. Sagittarius isn't about precision, it's about the big picture and enthusiasm. Virgo is about those details. If you can merge those two principles together, that's the opportunity. But it's possible, therefore, that little things could trip you up through the retrograde season. So if you have got appointments scheduled for just routine inoculations or checkups, dentist, for the vets, all that kind of stuff, that's very sixth house. But of course, Sagittarius is about our need for freedom. So one of the things that could come up for you, particularly with the square to Saturn, is that if you're feeling that the part of your life where you've often been very self-sacrificing, very diligent, very supportive of others, you've seen to those obligations and responsibilities in a very sincere way, I feel that at this particular time in your situation, you might find yourself being a bit more resistant. You might find yourself wanting to push back a little bit, do things a bit more on your terms, and that can cause some issues. Also, Jupiter for you is in the 12th house. Now, as I mentioned when I was talking about the natal chart, that can be a good thing. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. Most people associate it with that Sagittarius energy. But for you, this gives you an opportunity to think more about the deeper meaning of things. But the opposition with Venus suggests, particularly at this time of year, you might find yourself using your savvy and experience to help someone who's actually less fortunate. So whether it is making some sandwiches for some homeless people, dropping us some clothes at the charity shop, putting your loose change in the charity container in your local shop, all those kind of good deeds could be blessed by that Venus Jupiter initial opposition. The opposition between Jupiter and Mercury, that's just encouraging you not to get guilted in to doing things to help others. If you do it, it's got to be because you want to do it. Now, of course, Mars has been in your sign since September the 6th, and it's given you a lot more determination to live in your power. Good for you. But that opposition with Pluto suggests that if you've been doing that to a degree that someone else feels that you're so needing to get what you want from it that they're not featuring, you can use Mercury's journey through Sagittarius to be thoughtful. Don't box yourself in, but just be a bit more aware of how they may perceive the situation. Now, the 6th house can also be about jobs. If you're not particularly happy in a job, that's where the need to break out, do something more fulfilling, but also where you can use your tenaciousness because you can be so determined. You know, it does bug me, the popular astrology archetype for Cancer, that you're chained to the kitchen sink making homemade apple pie. Great, if you make some, can you drop it off at mine please? Oh, you're chained up, you can't. But you get my drift. There's so much more to you. You're an executive sign, you're a cardinal sign, you're a leader. But it is important to feel that we enjoy whatever we do. So if you're in a job which is a lot of give and not a lot of appreciation, and it seems to me, particularly when I talk to my clients, a lot of them work for some very big organisations around the world, looking after people is not often at the front of organizations' mindsets these days. So if you're in a situation where you don't feel appreciated, or there's tension in the air, it's not really your thing, look for another job. Sharpen up your curriculum vitae, get it out there and see what comes from it. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. So Leo, there is a lot of excitement around this event for your sign because of Mars shifting into Leo on Monday, the 4th of November, forging that fire trine through to the position of Mercury in Sagittarius. So all of that is going to bring you into the moment, give you a lot more thrust, because the Sun has and continues to be for now in the more sheltered 4th house. That's more about how you feel, it's more about home and emotional strands, but that combination between Mars and Mercury can just give you so much oomph. Now Mercury moving into Sagittarius as well can make you more playful, perhaps even mischievous, because Mercury's rulership of Gemini is a little bit like the magician. It's up to a degree no good, but I don't mean that in an unkind way. It just has a bit of the imp in it. It wants to have fun, it wants to be a little bit more provocative. But of course, because of the retrograde, it's possible there are going to be some connections that you develop between now and the 8th of January, particularly if you're single, that could be flirty, could be fun, but also could be short lasting. And there could also be changes of plan around certain arrangements. Now, that's going to be particularly so from the 26th of November through to the middle of December, whilst the retrograde itself is locked in. But don't forget, we do have the pre and the post retrograde periods, and the imposition of Saturn. Saturn, the 8th house, shared finances, resources, where we're most invested. You could, for example, find yourself really in a great and rather charismatic link with someone, but they may not be fully available. It's possible that maybe in an existing relationship, finance is getting in the way of the joy that's going on between you. If you are someone who's very creative and wants to be more self-expressive, the opposition between Jupiter and Venus initially is terrific. That can also bring out that very generous and warm and affectionate side of your nature. The initial opposition between Mars and Pluto is more challenging, to be honest. Something may come into the open, and it may be something that's a little bit difficult to deal with. It could be to do with your work. Maybe someone has been inclined to perhaps take you a little bit for granted, particularly Pluto back in the 6th house since the 2nd of September. But of course, Pluto will go back into Aquarius from the 19th of November, and that really is the start of a long-standing period of time. Remember, you can check out the deep dive on Pluto through to 243, where there really is going to be a big shift where you're setting your boundaries firmer. If you're wanting to meet someone very special, you're going to have a lot of thrust in order to achieve that. So playful stuff can be ahead, but it's playful stuff that you need to be mindful of the commitment, either emotionally or financially, of anyone that you're connecting to, and be aware that things can change, and quite quickly too, with the retrograde. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. Now Virgo, for you, because Mercury is your ruler, it goes into your 4th house. 4th house Mercury position is not the easiest, I feel, because The fourth house is how we feel. Mercury is about how we communicate through Gemini and how we analyze through your sign. Your sign's also about shaking something out, which creates a fundamental benefit. So Mercury moving into the fourth house suggests that when it comes to family, emotional, perhaps even Christmas plans, there could be some stop-starts, changes of plans. Things may be a little fluid. Maybe the demands of someone that you're close to can weigh a little heavily, particularly with Saturn applying 3 times. The opposition between Mars and Pluto, which starts this process off, however, suggests that you can feel very inspired by certain connections, perhaps even one person romantically. But however much you fancy them or like being with them, what that Mercury in the fourth house asks you is, how does it feel? And it's more difficult to say how we feel with Mercury in the fourth house because our feelings tend to go around our mind rather than come out of our mouths. That's just the way it tends to work with Mercury fourth houses. But of course, Sagittarius can also be very exuberant, very generous, very warm. Just factor in that not everybody may be quite as supportive or quite as much in agreement as you would like with Saturn in your 7th house of relating in such a strict application to Mercury on 3 occasions. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. So Libra, Mercury moving into your 3rd house, very evocative of the more Gemini-like energy. So quick, fast communication, sparkling, effervescent, enthusiastic, very vibrant, vivacious. All of the things you are, of course, quite naturally, but you just get an opportunity to amplify that in a more flowy way. And because your ruler Venus is already in this location, it's possible that someone recently has been hanging on your every word, whether it's your ideas themselves or your tone. If you're someone who does write or perform, then Venus being in Sagittarius has been of great assistance. And that connection across the heavens to Jupiter can bring about a much more outgoing and interactive dimension. And because you have had the collective in Scorpio, which is very much to do with the foundation of life and money, now you're going to be much more in the mood to meet up, mix and mingle. But of course the 3rd house is about technology. If you're looking to replace a phone or a computer or laptop, tablet, whatever, yes, with Sagittarius, whatever you're told, drill down into the detail, of course. And it's also possible that a trusted domestic appliance, the 3rd house can be our everyday world, could suddenly go on the blink. If there is a mode of transport that you thought about changing, you can think more carefully about it now. But Saturn's asking you in its square 3 times, don't rush the decision. Really be very judicious in weighing up what to exactly do. So Mercury in the 3rd house could point towards some bright and positive things, but also some frustration if things don't quite go to plan. If you are buying or wanting to get some merchandise online or get some ticket in for a concert, that could be prone to some glitches because of the Mercury retrograde. But we all know that Mercury retrograde gives us an opportunity to reset, rethink, recalibrate. Is there something around your immediate world and how you're connecting to people that can be revisited and refreshed and revitalized in some kind of way? If you see the opportunity, seize it with both hands. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off your life roadmap report. Please see below for more. So Scorpio, that new moon in your sign gave you an opportunity to really transmute from the ideas part of your situation into creating something that's more tangible and lasting. Venus in the second house often brings an uplift in income. Venus opposite Jupiter on this event suggests your finances can improve, but perhaps in some unexpected ways. But equally, there could be some costs that come up as well. Particularly if you're someone who likes to be very generous at Christmas, and many of us do, of course, but maybe there is a budget that you need to sit within. The position of Saturn in your fifth house, that's the sector of speculation as well as generosity. The second house is about everyday money, but also self-worth. If there's someone you really like, whether it's in your family, a friend, someone that you fancy, and you do splash out in order to, obviously create a lovely Christmas feeling, that's laudable, but is it the right thing for you? So I think Mercury in the second house is saying use your resources in a canny way. But with Venus in the opposition initially to Jupiter, there could be some good news. And sometimes we do have to speculate in order to accumulate. Once Jupiter and Mercury go into an opposition, to be honest, when they're relating well together, if you do work for yourself or you buy and sell online, you're a marketeer, you've got some kind of exciting business idea, I actually think that could work quite well for you, as long as you use the Mercury energy through its more Virgoan vibe to make sure that you really manage things with precision. But I feel a lot of Scorpios are very canny people. You have an ability to look beneath the surface and don't get so swept along with people's enthusiasm, and that natural ability to be more mindful is actually going to be a great asset to you. But a cost could come up, maybe because the fifth house represents children. Maybe it's your kids, if you've got them, who are suddenly wanting to attend an event, or may want a particular item for Christmas that could push that budget a little bit away from what you want. But if you have been showing a lot of endeavour and creativity and flair of late in developing some kind of idea, and now you're deploying it, because Mercury can be about marketing and Jupiter can be about the actual transaction, the sale, I feel that something good could happen to you despite this Mercury retrograde season that's upcoming. But of course, there could be the odd unexpected expense too. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off your life roadmap report. Please see below for more. So Sagittarius, having Mercury move into your sign, you've had a lot of Mercury in your sign, and towards the end of 2023, as Mercury went into that retrograde in your sign and started this year in a very close alliance with Mars, that may have given you a lot of desire to assert your individuality. But there's Saturn. All through this year has been applying the brake at different times, making you perhaps more mindful of your emotional situation. Neptune in the same sign as Saturn, Pisces, in the square with Mercury and Mars at the start of the year, suggests that whatever you set out to achieve, the emotional dimension has been shifting and changing, and it's been rather opaque and perhaps a little confusing at times, which may have taken some of your energy away. So if there was something that you wanted to manifest at the start of the year and it hasn't quite happened, I think Mercury sweeping into your sign, but most importantly being supported by both Pluto and Mars, does give you a major opportunity. And Mars arriving in Leo on Monday the 4th of November will certainly see you want to break free of some of the very dense, intense politics that may have infested, it seems to you, your situation since the 6th of September. But if you look back, you probably have been working very hard at understanding where you need to put your energy most in terms of where you're invested emotionally, perhaps in a romantic context, or even in terms of business and marshalling your long-term finances. So your desire to improve things is very strong. It doesn't change the fact that the sun is still locked away in house 12. You may have to just work through things a little more until the sun moves into Sagittarius later in November, and that gives you the ultimate celestial green light to get on the front foot. If some of your plans don't go exactly as you expect, go with the flow. Remember, you're a mutable sign. That's a great gift of yours. And Mercury itself is a mutable energy. So you might experiment at something, but having your ruler Jupiter opposite Venus as this event starts suggests your personality power and warmth and no little charm can certainly be very important to the process. Also, the other thing about the first house, of course, it's our physical well-being. Mercury can be linked to the nervous system. Important to make sure that you do get plenty of sleep and rest, as well as working with a lot of passion and a lot of enthusiasm towards or with the plans or projects that are really gripping you or about to grip you right through to the 8th of January 2025. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. So Capricorn, Mercury moving into your 12th house can be quite complex, particularly once the retrograde begins on the 26th of November through to the 15th of December. The 12th house can be that sheltered part of our situation, the more sensitive zone. It can be, in traditional astrology, our opposition, the people who are not necessarily in our corner, but they may not necessarily reveal their hands, so those so-called secret enemies. But the 12th house is where we can need to withdraw a little bit, because you have the sun in the very ebullient, friendly network in the 11th house. I think the overall mix of this is that you need to be more orientated towards people that you trust and know well. Some fair weather friends, I'm afraid, could get teased out into the open between now and the winter solstice. When the sun moves into your sign, it does help you to come into the moment. But at the moment, on the face of it, it looks friendly because it's in your 11th house. And Pluto, of course, in your sign has given you quite the experience since 2008, but it is being opposed by Mars on this event on your 7th house cusp. So there's politics potentially in a close relationship as well. What Mercury in the 12th house, particularly in that retrograde, is going to ask you to do is learn much more about what makes you tick, your deeper motivations, but also those of others. It's also asking you to become much more comfortable with your fears and anxieties and vulnerabilities. If you're a very proud Capricorn and find it difficult to reveal any so-called weaknesses, well, that's fair enough. We all need to be a little guarded about who we open up to, but it's about being or sharing how you truly feel with the right people at this time. For example, if you decided to go for some counselling, this could be an extremely positive period where all the connections and understandings that you make can be life-changing in a very dynamic and positive way. On the other hand, in your romantic situation, you may find yourself meeting up with someone in a strictly confidential manner, and that get-together could be quite spicy, but you may just want to keep it between you. But with Venus in the 12th house as well, and because of Saturn being in the 3rd house, just be aware that some tittle-tattle could come out into the open right through to the 8th of January 2025. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. Aquarius, for you, Mercury moves into your sector of friendship. You are a friendly sign generally. Sometimes you like your own space, nothing wrong with that. Can be a little selective who you spend time with, nothing wrong with that. But that 11th house energy is about, particularly in Sagittarius for you, it's about broadening your connections. If you have been caught up a lot with your professional and worldly demands and situation of late, this is a reminder to have fun, get in contact with your friends. Arrange those meetups. Of course, some long-term plans, the 11th house, could be subject to changes that maybe come from you. You rethink something. Maybe you are going to have a reunion with some old workmates or college or school reunion, which could prove to be extremely pleasurable. You have Venus in your 11th house in that fantastic opposition to Jupiter. Well, that itself is lovely too, but the Sun is in a very powerful part of your chart, certainly getting you to think about ambitions, goals and your role in life. It may be a case of who as much as what you know. An opportunity can come from a connection over the next few weeks which could surprise you but delight you in equal measure. What about the retrograde? Well, it is possible, I feel, with Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, that perhaps something that you had set your sights on that was really important to you, you rethink it. Maybe you rethink about the type of people you like to hang out with. Maybe it's your higher beliefs that are going to go through some kind of update and audit. I think it could be very healthy if that's the case. But for sure, there could be some meetups that are planned, but then suddenly the plan can change, which can be frustrating. Also, if you have a friend in your circle who you like, but perhaps they tend to be that character that when you go out for a drink, where's so-and-so? And they're at the back on every single pub you go into. That kind of thing could really grind your gears through to the 8th of January, Aquarius, because of Saturn, your old-fashioned ruler in your second house, is going to make you, hold on, that's not on. You need to, so people who are a little bit more fair weather friends are something you're going to be less amenable to and less tolerant of over these next few weeks. If you order your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, you'll get your free Zodiac, General, Love and Chinese e-booklets, as well as the rest of this year free, and in my special package of 30% off, your Life Roadmap Report. Please see below for more. So Pisces, for you, Mercury is occupying through this process your 10th house. The 10th house is where we connect to the wider world. Now Mercury, because of the thinking capacity of it and the learning capacity of Sagittarius, suggests that if you are wanting to change your career, which the 10th house can represent, some kind of retraining or rethinking may be in the mix. If you're open to this, this would be a fabulous time to attend some kind of course or conference or get together with other players in your sector and share information or knowledge. If you're not particularly satisfied in a job at the moment, just be mindful that with Saturn in your sign, it may seem that things are quite limiting, oppressive, but because of Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius, that need to get the information really clear will be important to make sure that you're not going from the proverbial frying pan to the fire. So information really important. Now it could be that you're very happy in your life role at the moment, could be around where you live, it's all tickety-boo, but Mercury is an interesting one. It can seep into us in quite a fascinating way, and because of the square occurring 3 times, you might be rather surprised that how you think about things, particularly around your work, particularly around how much you earn and how much you feel valued by a boss or an organisation that you work or are affiliated to. By the time we get to the end of the first week of January 2025, you may reset your posture in a different way, because as much as you can be very dedicated, hard work, sacrificing, you'll often go the extra mile where other people won't. But you and I know, once you reach that tip point, you go from being the ultimate empath to being much cooler. And that tip point, because Mercury can be so much more logical, could be revealed between now and the start of next year. But what about your romantic situation? Well, the 10th house can be about the folks. So if you've met someone recently, and with Christmas coming up, it may be that you're going to have that daunting experience of meeting people you don't know very well. But having Jupiter opposite initially Venus and then opposite Mercury will help you in that regard. If you invest into it your natural warmth and kindness, that will see you through. But most of all, what you're looking for, what the planets are asking you to demand, is much greater recognition. But you may need to rework or remodel your situation or your approach in a fresh way in order to extract the greatest benefits. And that could feel like a niggle. And of course, the other thing, you could be applying for jobs, attending interviews, hoping to have discussions which then prove to be utterly elusive, which can create a huge amount of frustration. Mercury retrogrades always create opportunities and always create those snags. But if we're positive about it, we've got a lot more to gain. Thank you so much for joining me for this Mercury through Sagittarius deep dive, including the retrograde. Remember, the retrograde begins on the 26th of November and it goes on through to the 15th of December. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 deep dive video forecast, please see the link beneath this video where you can do so now.